The United States of America and China have one of the most important and complex bilateral relationships in the world. Since 1949, the two countries have experienced periods of tension and cooperation over certain issues, including trade, climate change, and Taiwan. However, the relationship between the United States and China has become more complicated over the past decade. These two great economic powers in the world have a connection that seems difficult to separate, especially in terms of trade. However, the term of office of the former President of the United States, Donald Trump, seems to have further clouded the bilateral relationship between these countries, leading to a trade war with a large impact, not only on the economy of both countries, but also on the global economy. Things get worse when each side tries to show the superiority of their own system of government. So, in this video we will see the bilateral relationship between China and the United States, and why the United States dislike China. Keep watching. Chronology of the United States-China relationship, 1949 to 2022. The relationship between the People's Republic of China, PRC, and the United States, in fact, dates to 1949, and this matter is complicated by lack of trust, which in turn leads to tension. The relationship is one of close economic ties, which began to develop rapidly after the 1980s, and was followed by hegemonic competition in the Asia-Pacific. It has been described by world leaders and academics as the world's most important bilateral relationship in the 21st century. To understand the complexity between these two countries, we need to look back at the history of bilateral relations, starting from 1949 until today. October 1949, the Chinese Communist Party leader, Mao Zedong, established the People's Republic of China in Beijing on October 1st, after the peasant-backed communists defeated the nationalist government of Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang and thousands of his troops fled to Taiwan and received support from the United States, which resisted Japanese military aggression during World War II. This was one of the starting points that set the stage for decades of U.S.-China relations. June 1950, the Soviet-backed North Korean People's Army invaded South Korea on June 25th, and the United Nations, UN, and the United States rushed to South Korea's defense. On the other hand, China, in support of the communists, responded when the United States, UN, and South Korean troops approached the border of China. August 1954, President Dwight Eisenhower lifted the U.S. naval blockade of Taiwan in 1953, while Chiang Kai-shek deployed thousands of troops to the islands of Quemoy and Matsu in the Taiwan Strait in August 1954. This caused the People's Liberation Army of mainland China to respond by attacking the island. March 1959, the United States joined the UN in condemning Beijing for human rights violations in the uprising of Tibet. October 1964, China's first atomic bomb test, carried out at a time of U.S.-Sino tension over the escalating conflict in Vietnam. April 1971, for the first time ever, the Chinese table tennis team invited members of the United States team to China. On April 6, 1971, the journalists accompanying the players were among the first Americans allowed to enter China since 1949. Soon after, the UN recognized the PRC. February 1972, it was President Richard Nixon's first visit to China, and he had met Mao Zedong, who subsequently signed the Shanghai Community, which aimed to improve U.S.-Sino relations by allowing the U.S. to discuss related issues, particularly on the issues with Taiwan. 1979, President Jimmy Carter granted China full diplomatic recognition, while recognizing the One China principle, and severed normal relations with Taiwan. However, in April, the Congress passed the Taiwan Relations Act, which allowed for continued commercial and cultural ties between the United States and Taiwan. The move required Washington to provide Taipei with defensive weapons, but unofficially it violated the United States One China policy. July 1982, although President Reagan voiced support for stronger ties with Taiwan during his presidential campaign, his administration sought to improve Beijing-Washington relations at the height of U.S. concerns over Soviet expansion. Reagan visited China in April 1984, and in June, the U.S. government authorized Beijing to purchase military equipment from the U.S. June 1989, The United States government suspended military sales to Beijing and froze relations in the aftermath of Beijing's Tiananmen Square incident. May 1999. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, accidentally bombed the Chinese embassy in Belgrade during its campaign against the Serbian army occupying Kosovo, and this shook the United States-Sino relations. October 2002. President Clinton signed the United States-China Relations Act of 2000, granting Beijing permanent normal trade relations with the United States and paving the way for China to join the World Trade Organization in 2001. Between 1980 and 2004, U.S.-China trade increased from $5 billion to $231 billion. March 2007, China announced a budget increase of 18% in defense spending, and it received a response from the U.S., which is that this increase is not consistent with the country's goal of peaceful development. China claims it is increasing spending to provide better training and higher pay for its soldiers to protect national security and territorial integrity. September 2008, China became the largest foreign creditor of the United States, surpassing Japan. This is evidence of the growing interdependence in the bilateral economy between the two countries. August 2010, China has overtaken Japan as the world's second largest economy, and China is on track to overtake the United States as the world's #1 economy by 2027. After 2011, the economic tension between China and the United States increased because of several economic issues that occurred. Following the change in the leadership of the PRC government, President Obama met with President Xi Jinping in California to build relations with his counterpart and ease the increasingly strained U.S.-China relationship. Both sides promised to cooperate more effectively. Obama and Xi also vowed to create a new model relationship, which is a nod to Xi's concept of creating a new type of superpower relationship for the United States and China. Nevertheless, after the agreement was reached, there were still some tensions between the two sides in the coming years, especially during the era of President Donald Trump, which worsened bilateral relations between the two countries, leading to a trade war. This, in fact, continued with the spread of the COVID-19 epidemic throughout the world, starting from China. This is coupled with the issue of Taiwan and the issue of the Ukraine-Russia war, which even worsened the bilateral relationship. In November 2022, Biden and Xi met in person in Bali, Indonesia, for the first time after taking office as president. As a result of the meeting, the two leaders expressed their desire to ease bilateral tensions and agreed to reopen communication channels, including discussions on the issue of climate change that had been suspended for several months. The U.S.-China trade war. In 2019, the world witnessed a trade war between the United States and China. The war between Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, and Huawei became a hot topic of the world at that time. It came when Huawei, a Chinese technology company, which appeared to have stepped to the next level in the development of telecommunications technology, and this is not to Trump's liking. Trump then called on U.S. companies, which are lagging in the race, to control the agility of the mobile infrastructure. Not only did Trump not like the fact that the Chinese company was leading the 5G technology at the time, but he also took aggressive steps to prevent other countries from allowing Huawei to play a role in the implementation of such technology in their own countries. The reason for this is that Huawei is allegedly acting as a spy for the Chinese government. By allowing Huawei to play a major role in new mobile infrastructure in countries with which they have ties, Trump and his administration believe they are inviting espionage from China. Although it sounds like an incredible conspiracy theory, many countries have been pressured by Trump to take drastic measures by banning Huawei from playing a role in the development of 5G in their countries. The attack of the United States did not just stop by forcing its development out of allied countries, but it also involved personal matters in this war by ordering the arrest of one of Huawei's chief financial officers, namely Meng Wanzhou, who is also the daughter of the company's founder. Meng Wanzhou's arrest is perhaps the most high-profile of several major events in the U.S.-Huawei war, which has run parallel to the widening trade war between the two countries. Military rivalry between China and United States. If a war breaks out between these two superpowers, a clash between the two strongest military forces in the world, it will certainly be terrible. And according to reports, it is possible that the United States will suffer a rather severe defeat. That's the concern among former and current defense officials, including former U.S. military analysts, one of whom told the Breaking Defense website that, in a simulated war game of superpower conflict, where the United States is pitted against Russia and China, the United States appears to be losing very badly. Admiral Philip Davidson, who oversaw U.S. military forces in Asia, labeled China as the greatest long-term strategic threat to the United States. He explained the rapid buildup of China's military in almost every area, namely air, sea, land, space, and cyber. He also claimed that, although China's capabilities are not yet capable of surpassing America's in the region at present, they may be able to surpass the United States in the next few years. Today, China has the largest military on Earth, with 2 million active members in the People's Liberation Army, PLA. Americans' perception of China. Americans' negative views of China have amplified significantly since 2018. A research report was released in 2021 by the Pew Research Center to test the coldness of Americans' views towards China. Based on the study, as many as 67% of Americans have a cold view towards China and rate the country at a level of less than 50, based on a scale of 0 to 100. This percentage appears to be on the rise, from only 46% of the respondents who said the same thing in 2018. Among the open questions asked in the study was, "What is the first thing you think about China?" And the analysis found that Americans rarely mentioned the Chinese or the country's long history. On the other hand, they focused mainly on the Chinese government, including the policy or government system, and the approach taken at the international level and its economy. Human rights, China's economy, and the country's political system are the most talked about topics by the Americans, which respectively comprise 20%, 19%, and 17% of the respondents. In conclusion, the tension between these two superpowers, United States and China, has a very long history. The tension that occurs has a big impact on the world, particularly threatening peace in the Asian region. According to experts, the rivalry between the two superpowers also increases the risk of a military conflict between them in the Asia-Pacific. One of the main causes of hatred felt by the United States is when there is another party that can capture the throne held by their long-established great power.